I want to show you an idea that I've been experimenting with lately, and that's using open string drones in the middle of chord formations of different types. In that little example, what I did is I had a chord formation with an open E and an open A string. Just kind of moved it around. Another one had this. Open D and open E. What the guitarists from the 80s tended to do this a lot. People like Andy Summers of the Police, for example, but it's everywhere. And of course it's in other eras of rock as well, but I noticed it extensively in the 1980s. Andy Summers said that it kind of adds a mystical kind of effect to what you're playing, and I agree. I think there's at least 3 reasons for this. First, it adds some color tones to your sound. For example, some suspended fourths, some added ninths or 11ths, and major sevenths, and so on. So it mixes the harmony a little more rich. Second thing it does is it gives you a common tone in between your chords. For example, in that last example, there was an E in every chord I played, an open E string. So there's a common tone there that acts as a drone. And third thing it does is it brings out that open string sound, which is definitely different than when you stop a string with your finger. Now, in these examples, I'm going to show you some examples from different genres of the 80s. I'm not going to show you the whole song, just the excerpt of the song that uses this technique. And the idea is that you would get an idea of how to experiment with this yourself. I have added some chord diagrams with chord labels. You might disagree with the labels. That's fine. The point is to learn the experimentation. And underneath each chord diagram, I've also spelled out how I arrived at that particular label. I also tabbed out some of them, and I arranged these according to what I think is the easiest to the hardest so that you can get started. Anyway, here's the first example. Okay, this first example is pretty simple. It's Siouxsie and the Banshees, the intro to Israel. The chord also pops up in the bridge later on, but it's basically just one chord you have to work with. Okay, it has an open B in the middle. And it looks like this here. Okay, so in this excerpt from the Siouxsie and the Banshees Israel, all you have to do is sweep across. This is the intro section. All you have to do is sweep across that formation I just showed you. Okay, and then it goes into another section. If you add some flanger and some delay to that, and by the way, I always have some compression on here, and it's pretty much hyper compressed in this example, like 80s people did to get a real percussive sound. So anyway, here's with the flanger and delay added. So you can get some real spacey kind of sounds with that. But anyway, here's the tab. Okay, this next example is from the Cars, and it has 2 chords in it, but it has a big stretch. And they look like this here. Okay, and this is the pre-chorus of the song Magic by the Cars, and it goes like this. open E and B string at the top then some palm muting. The bass underneath is going. So what you're actually hearing is something like that, but that's with the bass and the guitar together. So you're going to need some palm muting, and I have hyper compression, analog chorus, and digital delay on to fill out the sound. Okay, this next example I'm just going to play through. It is Def Leppard's verse riff to Hysteria. It has the same basic sound as far as effects as the last example, with the hyper compression, chorus, and delay, and some palm muting in there. I'll put the chords in the tab at the end, and it's very similar to the last, except that what it does is it adds a moving bass line that you can actually hear in the guitar part. So here it is. Okay, this next example is Rush's verse riff from Spirit of the Radio. It starts off with just an E5 chord with some open okay, to a B, leaving that open. Down here we have an inversion of a E chord with the third in the bass. And you have to mute the A string on this, so I bring my finger over and just touch the string slightly so it doesn't ring. And then just a couple power chords. And with the full distortion and chorus and a little bit of compression on and a little bit of delay, it sounds like this. Here's the chord diagram. Okay, this next example is the verse riff of the Police's song Murder by Numbers, which has a jazzy kind of feel to it because it has a bass line that moves, as well as some chordal extensions that enrich in the harmony, and also some chord melody, which I've indicated on the chord diagrams by having unfilled circles that show you where the fingers go, so that you can figure that out. I have a hyper compression on again, some flanger, and some delay, like Andy Summers would do. Anyway, here's the progression. Okay, my last excerpt is from Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time, which has an interlude after the second verse with some chords with open strings in them, a moving bass line, and some chord melody. Again, I've indicated the chord melody with open circles on the chord diagram, as well as I've tabbed this one out. For effects, I've got my compressor cranked up, some flanger, and some delay on. Here's the excerpt. In this one is probably the hardest part, is because I'm mixing open strings with the melody. so I hope that this has given you some ideas to experiment with. Thanks for watching, and see you later.